A relatively new convert named Stephen stands before the highest religious council in Jerusalem. In a short time, he has outpaced the original apostles in his sheer volume of service and public debate, drawing the strict attention and the ire of the authorities. The charges leveled against him carry a death sentence. His accusers claim he is actively blaspheming God, threatening to destroy the physical temple, and trying to dismantle the ancient ceremonial laws. The high priest looks down from his seat and asks a single question: are these things so? Stephen's life depends on his next few words. He does not beg for mercy. Instead, he initiates a tactical, rhetorical trap disguised as a history lesson, one that will ensure his death but shift the trajectory of his movement. He begins his defense thousands of miles away and centuries in the past. He points to Abraham in Mesopotamia, long before the Israelites had a nation, a city, or a temple. This is a calculated opening. By anchoring his argument in their revered patriarchal history, Stephen temporarily disarms the council. They are listening to a familiar, sacred story. But beneath the surface, Stephen is weaponizing their own texts. He is building a case that the men sitting in judgment completely misunderstand how their God operates. Stephen tracks the narrative forward into Egypt. He reminds the judges that God elevated Joseph to extreme power and favor, not in Jerusalem, but in a foreign, pagan land. He then moves the timeline to Moses. When the God of glory appeared in a burning bush to deliver his people, it happened in the rugged, remote wilderness of Sinai. Israel's most profound divine encounters and miracles consistently took place far outside the borders of the Holy Land. Finally, Stephen addresses the tabernacle and the magnificent temple built by Solomon. He quotes the ancient prophets directly, declaring that the Most High does not actually dwell in structures made by human hands. With their own scriptures, he dismantles the first charge against him. He argues that trying to confine God to a single physical building contradicts the very nature of their faith. Now, Stephen introduces a darker thread, a relentless cycle where Israel violently rejects the very messengers sent to save them. He starts with Joseph, sold into slavery out of envy. This pattern escalated when the Israelites pushed Moses away to worship a golden calf. Stephen uses this historical loop to expose a fatal blind spot in the room. The ancestors these judges revere spent generations opposing the exact leaders God sent to deliver them. Then Stephen drops the historical narrative entirely. The story snaps into the present as he turns his focus directly onto his judges. He calls the council stiff-necked, indicting them for resisting the Holy Ghost in the exact same manner their ancestors did in the wilderness. He locks the trap. He tells them that their recent betrayal and murder of Jesus aligns with the historical slaughter of the prophets. In a matter of minutes, the defendant has become the prosecuting attorney. He has convicted his own judges of the very rebellion they claim to be stamping out. The formal court disintegrates. Cut to the heart by his logic, the council devolves into an uncontrolled, furious mob, physically gnashing their teeth at him. Amidst the sheer chaos of his would-be murderers, Stephen remains serene. He looks upward, telling the mob he sees the heavens open and Jesus standing beside God. That is the breaking point. The mob stops their ears, rushes him all at once, drags him past the city limits, and brutally stones him. Even as he is dying, his actions mirror the leader he was preaching about. His final act is to kneel down and pray aloud for the forgiveness of his executioners. On the periphery of this violence, a subtle but critical detail occurs. The false witnesses take off their coats and lay them at the feet of an approving young man named Saul. Stephen becomes the first martyr of this new faith, leading a vanguard of believers willing to surrender their lives for their convictions. The immediate fallout of his execution triggers a fierce wave of persecution, forcing the early believers to flee the confines of Jerusalem to survive. The execution triggered a physical shift in the movement's geography. Believers were pushed out of the temple and into the wider world, fulfilling the very argument Stephen made, that God cannot be contained by city walls.